I'm Leland Vittert. Hope you had a great weekend. We've been dealing with COVID-19 now for more than a year, and yet there is still so much that we all don't know. For example, I'm sure you've heard the term breakthrough infections a nauseating amount of times in the past few weeks. Well, how concerning are they really? Does it mean the vaccines aren't working, or does it prove they actually work remarkably well? And speaking of vaccines, when is the FDA finally going to fully approve them? We still don't know that either. What we do know is the Biden administration hasn't been the saving grace that they'd hoped to be. They have not hit their vaccination goals, and their messaging has been shaky at best. Instead of accepting that managing a pandemic is a lot harder than you might have thought, they are blaming news outlets, calling coverage of the pandemic irresponsible. Meanwhile, the unknowns continue to confuse so many Americans. Tonight, we're going to cover this from all angles. That means the science, the politics, the law, and yes, we'll tackle the messaging from the White House. First, to help us with what we don't know, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, MD, PhD, professor of health policy at UCLA Medical Center. Doctor, welcome back. Appreciate being with us on a Monday. Over the weekend, so many folks that I was with were talking about these breakthrough infections. It sounds scary. Should it be?
It's an important question right now. In general, the breakthrough infections are expected because the vaccines are not 100% effective. The same is the case for people who have recovered from COVID, so they also are at risk of having another infection. So far, the data actually look very good for people who have had a natural infection in terms of having a low likelihood of having a second infection with COVID-19. The data so far indicate that breakthrough infections do seem to be on the rise. But again, what matters most with infections, not only for COVID, is whether people are getting sick. And for people who have natural immunity or who have received the vaccine, it seems as though their likelihood of being ill is very small.
Back last year, we were so focused on case numbers. Given that so many people are now vaccinated and they may test positive, but to your point, not get that sick, is case numbers the metric we need to be looking at?
No, case numbers are sort of an advertising tool. I mean, they're really just for the purpose of exciting the population and often, unfortunately, scaring the population. They are not important. You know, people are infected by different viruses all the time. It's part of the contract when you're a human being on this planet. What matters is whether people are getting sick. That's what's always mattered. And that's really a more sustainable way to think about managing a pandemic.
If I'm vaccinated, which I am, something else that came up this weekend, do I need a booster shot? Do my parents need a booster shot?
Right. So this is an interesting question. So things are changing, and they're changing relatively rapidly right now.
Yeah.
So right now we're actually seeing that the proportion of people who are getting sick with COVID and in the hospital, but have been vaccinated in the past, is increasing compared to 1 or 2 months ago. And this is something that we saw from the CDC data that was released by the Washington Post recently. So right now it's looking like, even though infections are increasing, the rate that people actually getting seriously ill or dying is staying low. So right now, the data don't indicate that there's a strong need for that. There are some exceptions, potentially. So for example, people who are older and in nursing homes seem to have less protection from both prior infection and from the vaccines. So it's possible that they may need a little bit more help. But right now, there's really no strong evidence that that's needed.
Doctor, I've said it before and I'll say it again. A man who says we don't know is a powerful voice to have back. And we know our viewers, my sister included, particularly enjoy your commentary and your thoughts. Good to see you, sir, as always.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Much like the start of the pandemic, we had hot spots back then in New York City and other big cities, and we're now having hot spots, but this time they are often centered in rural America, like my home state of Missouri is now reporting the 6th highest average of new cases over the past 2 weeks. Missouri also has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. The two are correlated, with just 49% of the population fully vaccinated. The state's largest city, Kansas City, has implemented a mask mandate in response to the surge, a mandate our next guest is trying to block in court. Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt joins us now. Good to see you, sir. We appreciate it. We're both from the Show Me state, and it seems as though right now the data is from the Show Me state is showing us that vaccines work. Fair?
Well, vaccines have, if you're following the science, is the best way to protect yourself. But what we're talking about right now in St. Louis and in Kansas City are mandates from the government for vaccinated people, by the way, to wear masks, for kids to wear masks all day long. And I think people are tired of being lied to. They were told, hey, get vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask, get back to your normal life. The CDC changes course. Now in St. Louis and Kansas City, you got to wear masks. Kids, we know it's exceptionally rare for them to really be affected by COVID. Now we see studies that show the emotional toll, the psychological toll it can have for them to wear masks all day long, especially for special needs kids. We were told that Republicans were the ones leading to vaccine hesitation when it was Kamala Harris, the vice president, on the campaign trail saying she wouldn't.
We've covered that on this show. Kamala Harris is a candidate saying she wouldn't get the vaccine. Joy Reid questioning the safety of the vaccine as well. Different point, though, specifically about this lawsuit, because Missouri's got all sorts of laws about government restrictions, seatbelt laws, for example. What's the difference between a seatbelt law and a mask mandate?
Well, there's two different buckets here if you want to talk about the lawsuits. First of all, the way that they arrived at these mask mandates are arbitrary and capricious. For example, in St. Louis County, they had the most restrictive regime very recently until we filed a lawsuit in May, where you had to get the government's permission to have an outdoor barbecue. Okay, we filed a lawsuit. 3 days later, they backed off. They're not using science. They're not using facts. They're making this up as they go along. So that's the basis of those lawsuits. The other piece of it is the legislature went in this past year in their legislative session and said, if a council overrides that, the mandate's ineffective. And that's what happened in St. Louis County just last week. So we're in court trying to enforce that. The county executive saying the rules don't apply to him, and he's wrong.
We actually had the member of the city council, Tim Fitch, who tried to lead this charge. We had him on last week to talk about this. Speaking of the science, this was from Dr. Ladapo, who sent us some notes before his appearance just a minute ago. Most high-quality evidence, including clinical trials, has not found a benefit to mask intervention. So by that argument, you would say that's why there's, you said it's capricious how they're doing this, but say seatbelts that actually do work and we know the science behind them works, you don't have a problem with those kinds of government restrictions.
No, and look, here's the other thing. People are tired of being lied to. As I mentioned earlier, St. Louis and Kansas City, St. Louis had a 50-year high in murders last year. Kansas City had an all-time high. We're listening to these so-called leaders talk about public safety. We don't hear anything about violent crime. We have a prosecutor that actually doesn't even show up in individuals charged with murder who are being released. The facts that they're applying here, it doesn't add up. This is about control at this point.
You think it's about control, or you think it's about politics?
Well, all of the above. It's about genuflecting to the left. This is virtue signaling, and it's restricting people's freedom. And I wouldn't be doing my job as the state's attorney general if I wasn't there trying to protect people's liberty. Because what we're talking about is the government mandating people wear masks who've been vaccinated. Kids wearing masks all day long.
We understand. I don't think there's nobody who wants to wear a mask. That's for sure. Mr. General, we'll leave it there. Come back as these lawsuits continue through the courts. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Great to be with you, Leland.
And you too, sir. Thank you. From big state to big city, you might even say it's a big state or a small state that wants to be a big state. Chicago is certainly a big city, though. Hundreds of thousands of people crowded Grant Park. Despite all the concerns about the Delta variant, Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot defended the decision to hold the event, otherwise known as Lollapalooza, because everybody who went into the Lollapalooza festival had to either show a negative COVID test or their vaccination card. Dr. Allison Arwady is the health commissioner for Chicago. We appreciate you being with us, ma'am. Thank you. You just heard the Attorney General of Missouri talking. Is he putting lives at risk in Missouri by fighting these mask mandates?
So What I did like hearing him say was that the vaccines are effective and by far the most important thing that people can do to help protect themselves. I'll tell you, here in Chicago, we have just started to see some increase here in our numbers. And in that setting, following the CDC guidance, we've asked people to temporarily put masks back on just to help us get through this Delta surge. But I also agree with the person who was on before saying that we're watching hospitalizations and deaths. I'm not concerned about overwhelming the health system at this point.
We have
a free and widely available vaccine. And in those two settings, we don't want to close down. We want to be open, but we want to do everything we can to be, open and careful. And vaccination is the main key to that.
Nobody wants to go back to lockdowns for sure. Right. It's interesting you talk about the CDC maps and the spreads, and they talk about mask mandates where there is high spread. Cook County, as you know, is in the red level. Why is this a recommendation and not a mandate?
Yeah, so actually Cook County is in the orange level, where there's
maybe
4
Chicago
levels.
That's red, okay.
Yeah, well, Chicago and Cook County are both at that substantial level. And so we waited, and we really have tried to very much follow. We've been using actually the same metrics here in Chicago all along so that people have a sense of when we are making recommendations. It's based on that risk.
So a mask mandate, and I ask this simply almost selfishly, because I don't think anybody wants to get to a mask mandate, but that's still on the table.
So, right. We've said, while we're here at the substantial space, we thought it was appropriate. Only when we crossed that threshold did we make that recommendation. And I think if we do get into that red high, that's when we might consider it. We've seen folks here in Chicago step up already before in terms of protecting themselves and others. And what we've seen when you look internationally, these Delta surges, they can be very fast, but then they are coming back down. So I've been telling folks this isn't forever, but it's to help get us through while we keep trying to get people vaccinated, which remains by far the most important thing. And more than 90% of the folks coming into Lollapalooza there were vaccinated. If more than 90% of Americans were vaccinated, we'd be putting this largely behind us.
Okay. People say, though, and we heard this from the CDC, that scared everybody so much that vaccinated people can spread this. But something like Lollapalooza, you don't worry about becoming the super spreader like the event the CDC covered?
Yeah, so here's how we think about this. I felt strongly about having a vaccine or testing requirement, first and foremost, for that gathering. It is an outdoor gathering, which we know is one of the safest things that can help with gathering. And it is almost all young people. So if this had been in a state that was really surging, if this had been indoors, if this had been 70 and 80-year-olds gathering, I don't know that we would have been able to move ahead. I expect we'll see some cases just because of the sheer number of people.
It also brings in $1.7 billion to the city, which is something you don't want to shut down, considering what Chicago's been through. These statistics caught our eye, and I wanted to get your thoughts before we let you go. 105 homicides in July in the city of Chicago. That's from the Chicago Police Department. 69 COVID deaths, sourced from the New York Times COVID tracker. Is gang violence now a public health crisis in Chicago?
So we've actually been taking some of the lessons that we've learned from the COVID response and working on applying them actually to do a better job for preventing and responding to violence, using some of what has worked well with public health. So I think we're really trying to. Is that a yes?
Is that a yes that it is a public health crisis?
I think it's certainly, we've been using the term that this is a public health issue. And I want to be careful, when we label things crisis, I want to make sure that we're identifying specific funding. And that's certainly something that we're working on and the mayor's really committed to.
How many more people would have to die over we know COVID's a crisis. How many more people have to die over COVID from homicides to make gang violence a crisis?
So where we look at over COVID, these are both major public health problems in Chicago, don't get me wrong. But where we look at the number of homicides, over the last year and a half, we've had more opioid overdoses than that, and we've had 5 times more COVID deaths than that. And so these are all issues, and we're trying to work on all of them together. But let's get people vaccinated and have COVID be something that puts behind it. We don't have a vaccine for violence in the same way, but we definitely want to use some of these lessons, and we are really trying to take this seriously and work on it. But I don't see these as separate things. They both need attention.
All right. We'll tackle the violence in Chicago coming up in about 15 minutes. Doctor, we appreciate your time. I know it's been a busy weekend for you. Get some rest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. The White House is upset with the media. During the Trump administration, that was pretty much every day. With the Biden administration, it is almost unprecedented. This weekend, the administration's press flacks read some of their favorite publications, the Riot Act, Even normally Biden-friendly New York Times wasn't immune to criticism over their stories about breakthrough cases. Few people know the media like Colby Hall, founding editor of Mediaite, the premier website for media coverage, joins us now. All right, Colby, is the Biden media honeymoon over?
Well, I'm not sure it ever really existed. I don't know if reading the Riot Act is a correct assessment. I think what happened is the press shop was very concerned about the information that was being spread. I mean, this Delta variant and the sort of spike in COVID cases is a complicated one. And the way that this narrative and story is being told has literally life and death consequences. And so their concern was in showing a narrative that people were saying things like, if you're vaccinated, you can spread the virus just as much as the unvaccinated. And that's not entirely true.
I don't want to quibble semantics here, but when you write to publications, you're doing it wrong. Your coverage is irresponsible. That's pretty harsh language, especially to publicly call out what you'd think of as friendly news organizations. This isn't like the Biden administration talking to the Gateway pundit.
Well, their concern was that those outlets were being semantically wrong. That's the whole point of the story, is that this is about the semantics. Yes, vaccinated people can spread the virus, but only if they're affected. And it shows, the data shows anywhere from 80% to 95% of those who had the vaccine don't get infected. So what they were saying is that the way that it was being reported was only going to keep people from getting vaccinated. And, and by the way, White House press shops have been in dialogue with media outlets for administrations
since time began.
Exactly.
Sure.
So what they did isn't that outrageous.
Okay, yeah, I guess doing it publicly on Twitter is what caught our eye. We're listening to sort of the Biden press shop try to message right now through the rise of Delta, and do you need, what encourages people to get vaccines versus what makes people feel like they don't need to bother getting vaccines if they still have to wear masks. When the Trump administration was all over the place, people said, well, this is incompetence. When the Biden administration is all over the place, it seems as though they say, oh, well, science is hard and this is complicated. Fair?
Well, I think that's a fair assessment, although I think it's a matter of degrees. But I will give you the idea. I will agree with you that the Biden administration over the last 2-3 weeks with the rise of the Delta variant, they have been confusing at best in the way that they've messaged this, and it's tough. I mean, they've been dealt a tough hand.
Yeah, it is tough.
But is there a different standard? Well, I think, with President Trump, he was way more vocal about saying, oh, it'll go away in 2 days and only 15 people have it.
Hold on. Way more vocal, but President Biden declared victory on July 4th. He said America can reopen. They held celebrations. They held fireworks. This was not a slow walk.
Well, as I would take issue with what the Attorney General of Missouri said, that the Biden administration lied to America that they could take their masks off if they were being vaccinated. I mean, that's just a specious argument because, frankly, that was before the Delta variant. Like, science changes.
Well, it does.
New things happen.
But I guess
we
can agree, though, the Biden administration seems to be getting more of the benefit of the doubt that science changes than the Trump administration did. This is going to be a big story this week and going into the weekend. President Obama having his 60th birthday party, happy birthday, in Martha's Vineyard with hundreds of people. If President Trump was holding his birthday party in Mar-a-Lago with hundreds of people, would it be getting the same coverage?
Well, he does, frankly. Trump does have hundreds of people
all the time.
All the time. But when he did that with sort of like an unmasked and unvaccinated sort of Republican, they caught a lot of hell from the media. So is Obama getting a pass on this? Probably. Will he end up having the party? I mean, there's so much bad press right now. It's feasible that they'll cancel it. I also think President Obama is at a point where, he just doesn't care. Like, he's 60 and he's like, I'm just going to do it. But, if it's outside,
I'm 60 years old. I'm 60 years old, and I put down big deposits for the caterers and for the band and everybody else. The party goes on. Hey, it was great talking to you, Colby. I've admired your guys' work for a long time. This is a pleasure. Good to see you. Have a great week. It's going to be a busy one.
Anytime. Yeah, it will be. Always is. Thanks, Leland.
Coming up. The crisis on the border is escalating. That is unquestionable. And there is new pressure on the Biden administration to respond after drone video shows the largest group of migrants yet crowded under a bridge. A border mayor on what this means for his city coming up. Plus, are the cracks in the Democratic Party starting to show? The fighting over who's responsible for the expiring eviction moratorium. Concerns are growing about a potential housing crisis in neighborhoods around the country. Then from crime to COVID, a deep dive into the issues plaguing the city of Chicago, what that means for people around the country, and a look at how ammunition shortage in the United States is now impacting law enforcement and people who want to protect their homes.
Delta variant, the president has asked all of us, including the CDC, to do everything in our power to look for every potential legal authority we can have to prevent evictions. To date.
All right, senior advisor to President Biden, Gene Sperling, played defense today, which happens every once in a while from the podium. But today, the administration had to fend off attacks from fellow Democrats. It all comes down to the end of the eviction moratorium. That's a holdover from the Trump administration policy that protected people behind on their rent from getting thrown out on the street. It is a rare moment of dysfunction as the White House and Democrats in Congress are trying to shift blame back and forth. And now some progressive members of Congress are camping out on the Capitol Hill steps because they're upset the Biden administration will not unilaterally keep the policy. Axios congressional reporter Sarah Muha with us now. Sarah, we appreciate it. We've always known about this split inside of the Democratic Party between the progressives and President Biden. Inevitable that it was going to come to a head?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You mentioned it. There's a lot of blame casting going on here, right? Speaker Pelosi and leadership, they're being blamed by House progressives for calling August recess, regardless of the fact that they did not get this extension of the eviction moratorium passed. And then in turn, Speaker Pelosi is pointing fingers at the White House because, in all fairness, they did only give them 2 days notice to say, actually, this is going to be Congress's problem to solve. There was a little back and forth about whether or not this could be done by executive order, but it kind of came to a head when they realized, nope, this is Congress's issue.
Yeah. There's a few laws that you can't violate with executive order, which is what the Supreme Court said about this. What do you make of the fact that Pelosi took the side of the progressive squad over the White House? How much of that had to do with her own personal political survival?
Well, regardless of the fact that, Pelosi is going to stay Speaker for the time being, I don't think she's in any trouble. She's already signaled that she's not going to be leaving, or she will be leaving likely soon, and it's her mantle. And, honestly, we've seen this happen a few times where Pelosi has taken the side of progressives, most recently with the infrastructure bill, right? Progressives said that they will not vote on that bipartisan infrastructure bill unless it comes along with that $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package, and Speaker Pelosi has packed progressives on that as well. So this isn't anything new, I don't think.
All right. This was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez yesterday. Take a listen on the issue.
We cannot, in good faith, blame the Republican Party when House Democrats have a majority.
Pretty clear.
Absolutely. The House did not have enough votes. They spent all of Friday trying to whip all those votes to get this moratorium passed.
It goes to this larger issue, though, that if all of a sudden evictions begin, which they very well might, depending on what happens over the next week and in the courts, the lead of every nightly newscast is going to be some poor person out on their street. And how worried are Democrats that they're going to get blamed for it if there's sound bites like that out there?
I think that's a totally valid concern. The midterms are coming up pretty soon. And again, sorry to bring it back to infrastructure one more time, but that's another reason why folks want to get this thing passed so quickly so that they can win the midterms and keep the House. The bottom line is you are right that there is going to be a person on a newscast because what happened at the end of the day, the Center on Budget Policy Priorities estimated that this could affect over 11.4 million Americans, politics aside.
Stunning. Well, at least you came up with a number with it. The White House wouldn't give a number of how many people could be affected. Sarah, you are an intrepid congressional reporter. If you can make infrastructure seem interested and bring it all back to that, we appreciate it. Check her out on Axios.com. Some great newsletters. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
We want you to stop what you're doing, cooking dinner or talking to somebody, and take a look at this video that's on the screen. No, it's not thousands of maskless partiers at a music festival. It's a new drone video of the Border Patrol holding about 1,000 illegal immigrants in Mission, Texas. That's just outside McAllen, just over the border. It is stunning, and it shows how the crisis at the border is not stopping anytime soon, and it is getting worse by the day. We don't need to tell that to Mayor Don McLaughlin. He runs Uvalde, Texas, which, like so many border towns, is now flooded with people in the country illegally. Mayor, we're going to put that video up once again and just look at it. And you see people driving over that bridge heading to or from work. They don't really seem bothered by it. Has everybody become numb to this now?
Well, everybody's just given up because you keep preaching to the federal government to do something about it, and they don't do anything. They just look at you and say, well, we're going to do what we want to do. I mean, and that's in Mission. We've got the same thing in Del Rio, Texas, under the bridge at Del Rio. Last I heard yesterday, between 500 and 700 under that bridge. And every holding facility is full. And if you take a close look, very few of those people are wearing masks. They're sure not social distancing, what protect us from COVID.
Well, there's a lot of reports that people aren't getting COVID tests just because there's just not the facilities to do it before being sent all over the country. 180,000 people came across the border in June, likely in July. We'll wait for numbers. That's how many we know about that the Border Patrol encountered. Most of them were then set free. That's 2 NFL stadiums of people. How many end up in Uvalde? Is there anything you can do for them?
No, I mean, we're not equipped to handle them. I mean, we're not. We're a small town. We don't have the facilities to take care of them and that. So, and most of them that come through Uvalde don't want to. The problem we're having is with the illegal aliens that are coming through with the coyotes. They're destroying people's houses when they break in. They're cutting people's fences. I talked to a landowner this morning that had his fence cut 8 times between Saturday.
Well, if your fence cut, your livestock's out, and that's your livelihood right there.
Yes, and the federal government's doing nothing about protecting it. You talk about the housing issue. You could pay for the eviction notices by just shutting this border down with all the money that the federal government's wasted. Wow. I mean, all they're doing is aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise.
Well, they don't seem to be throwing anybody out, that's for sure. They've said as much. Even some people with felony arrests don't get thrown out. Mayor, we appreciate your time as always. Something tells me we're going to be talking quite a lot as the summer goes on.
Sure, I look forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Coming up, is it the pandemic, safety concerns, or something else? A look at why ammunition is now in short supply, even for police departments and their training. Plus, mass murders are becoming commonplace in Chicago, but in an alarming new report, we're going to see just how many go unsolved and why. Talk about this and anything else that's on your mind with us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Leland Vittert. The city of Portland can't get enough police officers now to join a unit that's focused on combating gun violence, which is plaguing Portland right now. 14 job openings were announced in May, but only 4 police personnel have applied. The city's original 38-person team was shut down last year following racial justice protests after the team was criticized for racial profiling. A shooting in New York Queensboro has now been captured on surveillance camera. 10 people were hurt when 2 masked gunmen opened fire on a crowd on Saturday night. The 2 suspects took off on mopeds with their accomplices. They're still on the loose. The NYPD says their targets are known gang members from one street gang. None of the victims were told have life-threatening injuries. Thankful for that. In 6 years of mass shootings here in Chicago, there have only been 2 convictions. 6 years, 2 convictions. The Chicago Police Department says that mass victim shootings aren't prioritized over other shootings, partly because they require an enormous amount of time and resources in comparison to the other shootings. Think about that for a second. Of the 39 mass shootings that have happened in the city this year, only 1 person has been charged. As of 2016, 23 suspects have been charged in just 21 of the more than 200 mass shootings. Only 2 of them have been convicted. Of all the mass shootings that have happened in Chicago since 2016, 126 people were killed and more than 1,000 people, say that again, more than 1,000 people hurt. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into these numbers. Anna Devolantes, host of the Anna Devolantes Show on WGN Radio, longtime and well-awarded Chicago journalist. This is one thing we wanted to talk to you about. John Kass's column summed it up like this before the Chicago Sun-Times put together those numbers. The city of anarchy, calling Chicago Chirac is now an insult to Iraq.
You know, Leland, I don't like the name calling so much. I wish it weren't a problem for the city, bottom line. But at the end of the day, the way to make it not be name called, our city that we love, is to make the violence problem better and have fewer innocent people losing their lives. We have 2,500 people shot in the city of Chicago. So far this year, 450 people have lost their lives. Those are really, really disturbing statistics for anyone to think about in one city in America.
Yeah, we had the health commissioner on earlier, and she wouldn't call gang violence a public health crisis. She would only say it was a public health problem. Does the city leadership understand how bad this is, or is it just politically expedient to brush it under the rug and not deal with it?
One of the things I've noticed is that none of them agree, and all of them are finger pointing, and nothing is working. Nothing we're doing right now, I think we can agree, is working. And the finger pointing doesn't help. And the fact that they all sort of just dig up statistics that suit their cause and try to sell their message is it's just wrong.
You made the point, though, really well, that there are 400 plus people who are killed. That's somebody's mother, that's somebody's son, that's somebody's brother, that's an uncle, that's a kid who doesn't have a father. The July crime statistics are stunning in a bad way, in every way possible. We'll put them up there so people can take a look at the statistics for themselves. But at some point, you say it's just finger pointing back and forth. There are some people who want to enforce the laws, like the police chief, and then there's the prosecutor who seems to think no matter who you kill or shoot or rob or rape or carjack, you should be let out of jail.
There is a problem, and there's no doubt in my mind, after having studied the statistics, that if you look at how many people are out on electronic monitoring now for crimes like murder, crimes like aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, people who have fired into a crowd and done those very things you were just talking about, who are out on electronic monitoring right now, and we're supposed to believe that it's all going to be okay and they're just going to be good. Habitual offenders, that they're not going to reoffend. But they're going back into communities, don't forget. And I know we're concerned about social justice, but let's be concerned about the justice of those innocent children. The 7-year-old shot in the McDonald's drive-through, the 73-year-old veteran who was shot and killed during a carjacking. We had a 20-year-old who was just going back to school, and he was shot out of nowhere. He didn't even know what hit him.
And from your reporting, those people would not have been shot because the people who shot them would not be on the street if not for this change in policy.
All of these folks had prior offenses that they were out on bond or out on electronic monitoring for at the time. And I think that one of the things we're hopeful about, and maybe over-hopeful, is this whole idea that these gun strike forces from the feds is going to make that much of a dent. I am hopeful. Boy, I am hopeful. But I've seen these kinds of programs before, and they sound very similar. And I do not deny that our federal law enforcement partners are important to help state and local officials in the city of Chicago police who are grossly understaffed and need help.
And undersupported as well.
But I just wonder about those things, though, Leland. How much can they really do? I mean, we had a war on drugs campaign. This is a war on guns campaign, and people still got drugs last I checked. The people who still want to do wrong with guns will get guns, and they'll still fire into crowds just like you were talking about, and there will be mass shootings. We're the mass shooting capital of America right now, and the city needs to wake up.
Well, one voice that you would think could wake it up would be former President Obama, who is spending the summer in Martha's Vineyard right now. Still has a house in Chicago. There's a big art festival with his portraits here in Chicago. Are there any community folks here who are disappointed that he hasn't taken a larger role?
I have heard from a lot of folks who feel as if his voice would be welcome in the city of Chicago right now, that he's a respected voice. You see Michelle Obama there. She's a respected voice. There are respected voices in minority communities as well. And I just feel as if, yes, it would be good for Chicago if they got more involved, and that they got more involved in the kinds of programs that can help teens choose a better life, choose a better path in life. And there's the presidential center that's being built, but it's not there. It hasn't started yet, so those programs aren't here.
And they've got a lot of money to start the presidential center. How helpful would his voice be? And he did this when he was president, not so much afterwards. How helpful would his voice be in talking about how getting frequent flyers, repeat offenders, the people you talked about and reported on, off the street? Would it make it more palatable if he said, we need justice in these communities in addition to social justice?
I think so. I do. And, you know, I give a lot of credit to our former chief of police, Eddie Johnson, who's come on my show a lot. And he's talked about this, Leland, because he says that there has to be a certainty of consequence. And he totally understands how we got to where we are at this point in time, a distrust of police and a lot of rebuilding to do. But he also thinks that this is not, you know, a time for there to be no consequences and to treat folks who do commit violent crimes as if nothing is wrong and they can go back in the communities.
Anna De Volantes, thank you very much. Great conversation. We really appreciate your expertise on Chicago is incredible, and really we're better for it. Thank you.
Good seeing you, Leland.
Nice to see you. Iran back to its bad acts, and perhaps we now are getting some tough talk from the administration about that. The toughest words so far from the State Department about Iran and possible U.S. retaliation. We'll be right back.
Iran continues to act with tremendous irresponsibility. We are in very close contact and coordination with the United Kingdom, Israel, Romania, and other countries, and there will be a collective response.
Biden administration showing its teeth a little bit to Iran for the first time, promising, as you heard, a collective response after Iran carried out a drone strike on this tanker that is managed by an Israeli company. That happened yesterday. Now we're going to show you where it happened and why it's going to impact you at home. And this is important. Strait of Hormuz right here. It's only about 25 or 30 miles here. Iran controls much of this, and they continue to harass shipping in the strait. They use this as a linchpin and a leverage point for the United States and against the Saudis as well. The strait sees roughly 18 million barrels of oil pass through it every day, and Iran has the largest border there, United Arab Emirates and Oman down here. It's not the first time Iran has targeted an oil tanker in the straits. They've also targeted U.S. warships. It's not going to be the last. What's in it for them? Well, whenever there's trouble right here, the price of oil goes up. So for a country like Iran, that means hard currency into that country. And of course, here at home, it means gas prices just go up. Morgan Ortagus was a spokesperson in the State Department under both President Bush and also under President Trump. Morgan, dissect that word, collective response. Is it that tough a language?
Well, and I also lived in Saudi Arabia, right where you're pointing to, whenever I worked for President Obama. So this has been something that Republican and Democrat administrations have had to deal with. The Iranians have been up to this sort of behavior for a long time. And it's important for your audience to know, Leland, that this was nothing more than a terrorist attack. And the administration has struggled to call it what it is. But this is a terrorist attack sponsored by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And in fact, we know that these sort of suicide drones that they used that were packed with explosive actually targeted the sleeping quarters on these ships. So they were intentionally going after civilians. They may have not known who was on the ship, but they had every intent to kill the British and Romanian national that they killed. So first of all, America and the United Kingdom and the EU should be treating this as it is, as a terrorist attack. And we should stop negotiating this stupid, flimsy JCPOA with Iran while they're committing terrorist attacks.
So, but the term collective response, was that meant to be scary? Should Iran interpret it as scary?
I think it was meant to be vague because they're not exactly sure where the response will come from. I don't know that it's likely that it's going to come from the United States, only because it wasn't one of our citizens that were targeted. It was obviously, I mentioned earlier, British, Romanian, and of course an Israeli owned ship, from what we know so far. So I think it's likely that you could respect a response from one of the countries that were targeted.
We certainly know the Israelis never shy away from such responses, but unlikely to see something like what you oversaw of Qasem Soleimani or some kind of major punchback. You'd expect something more proportional.
I think so. I think that's right, and we'll see what proportional is. I'm sure whatever is being discussed is being coordinated with the United States and with the EU. But I have to tell you, Leland, that there's some troubling things that we're seeing come out of the European Union. Number one, they still haven't publicly named it as Iran being behind this terrorist attack, which the whole world knows it was. And number two, the EU is actually sending their lead negotiator, who's their negotiator on the JCPOA, to Raisi's inaugural, which is the new quote unquote president of Iran, they're sending him to the inaugural, right? We shouldn't be sending diplomats and treating this inauguration as if it's normal and treating this terrorist state as if it's normal. They should be treated as the pariah state that they are.
We also saw something interesting inside of Iran, which was protests in the streets, very similar to the Green Revolution that began when President Obama first took office. A little bit of deja vu all over again. Anything worth reading into that in terms of Iran trying to flex its muscle while you've got these protests?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is very typical for the regime. Anytime they have anything going on inside the country, one of the first things that they tend to do is to cut off the internet. So we've always sought for ways to try and support the Iranian people, and we hope that this administration, whether it's the people of Iran or the people of Cuba, these people are protesting for their freedom, for their right, for a transparent and open government. And so we will see what they do. I think it was the fall of 2019, I believe it was, before COVID, when these similar protests happened in Iran. And actually, we estimated, and it's hard to estimate these numbers, but we estimated at the State Department at the time that there was about 10,000 Iranian citizens that they jailed, and that they killed probably likely at least 1,500 of their own citizens. So they will put these protests down with brutal force.
All right, Morgan, unfortunately, we got to leave it there. We've had long conversations in the past. We will in the future, especially about Afghanistan as the drawdown continues. See you soon.
Congrats on the new show, Leland.
Thank you. Thank you. Congrats on the move to Nashville. All right, coming up, there's so many to choose from, but we are going to introduce you to today's most out-of-touch mayor. We wanted to wish a belated happy birthday to America's most out-of-touch politician. How could we have missed it? You might remember last week, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser imposed an indoor mask mandate on the nation's capital. At the news conference, she said that D.C. residents would embrace the new restrictions. They didn't. She issued the mandate on Thursday to keep everybody safe. And conceivably, in the interest of public safety, such a mandate would take effect immediately, to keep everybody safe. But no, while she announced it Thursday, it didn't go into effect until Saturday morning, and now we know why. She celebrated her birthday Friday night at Washington's Anthem Theater with Dave Chappelle, among others, maskless, of course. Here's Prime.